What's up, everybody? It's the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm Jake Rowe with Dogs 24/7. With me, Kip Adams and Rusty Mansell, also of Dogs 24/7. And we are here to talk to you 100% about the early signing period, what has been, I guess, National Signing Day since its inception, since it was brought into play. And just to kind of let our audience know something a little bit, we had talked about coming on yesterday morning, the first day of the early signing period, doing a quick show to preview what was going on, and then coming back last night. And guys, that was like eating a big meal and saying you're going to go on a run after. I mean, we didn't even get to the front door before deciding not to do it because stuff started popping off well before 8 a.m. yesterday, and we bailed. We were like, all right. There wasn't even a discussion. It was just kind of like understood, like, yeah, we'll get to this on Thursday.
I'll be honest with you, Jake. I was never in. I was never in. I don't know what was going on that text thread, but I was never in.
But yeah, and I get it. I get it, man. It was a wild and crazy day yesterday. And guys, one of the things I love about National Signing Day is it's always crazy. It's always, wild. It's never wild in the exact same way twice. I mean, it's just never the exact same type of story twice. And yesterday, you had the Travis Hunter thing flipping to Jackson State. And listen, I'm not throwing any shade when I say this, okay? We all know Mike Farrell. Mike's been at this a long, long time, and I really don't care. You can be listening to the show. I don't give a rip what you think about Mike Farrell. He's been doing it a long time, and he's been doing it a long time for a reason. And I'm listening to him on the radio he's on XM with Rick Neuheisel and Chris Childers. I love that show, although I couldn't tell you the name of it at this particular moment. And he's talking to him, and he's like, yeah, Travis Hunter, I think he might flip to Georgia. I think it's going to be Georgia. And they're sitting here telling him, like, it's being reported he's going to flip to Jackson State. He's like, no way. It's not going to happen. I don't see it. That's how unbelievable that was for a guy who's seen the things that he's seen. He didn't think it was going to happen. So that happens. Georgia's able to land Marvin Jones Jr. They don't get Kamari Wilson. They don't get Shamar James. And a couple of flips I think we expected coming into the day. Tyree West flips, but he flips to a school that we didn't necessarily anticipate in Tennessee. Marquise Groves Killebrew flips to Texas A&M. And I think by the time, we all woke up yesterday morning, we kind of realized that was going to happen. But Rusty, compare it just in terms of intensity to other signing days and how crazy it was. How crazy was yesterday for you?
I think this is the first time, the majority of 90% of the news happened in the afternoon, the undecided news. Me and Kip are sitting there at like 12, and I'm like, dude, we're till 4 p.m. Basically, there's not, unless something pops, there's not a whole lot going on here. So for me, that one was a little bit different. The news is usually kind of all over the place about one or two kids on National Signing Day Eve, but Tuesday night, Steve Wilfone called me, and we were trying to compare notes on 4 or 5 kids, and it was all over the place Tuesday night. And it was just one of those crazy days, man, where anything could have happened, and it did. Kamari, I think at the end of the day, Kamari Wilson was the one that I thought was going to end up. I know there was a lot of conversation. Smoke Bowie could have went any way. I mean, he could have ended up at Georgia very easily. There was a lot of conversation with him and the Georgia staff last couple of days. But Kamari Wilson's the one that Georgia felt really good about. They should have. I said on our board, he was a solid commit for a long time, but those solid commits don't mean anything until you get that pen to paper. So could have been a solid commit to several schools, but Georgia felt very good about him. And at the end of the day, didn't get him. But Marvin Jones Jr. was an absolute have to. And holding Julian Humphrey was a big, big deal, going into yesterday as well.
Yeah, and, I look back and, obviously, listen, I mean, kudos to Florida. Kudos to Billy Napier and Corey Raymond for the work they did in getting Kamari Wilson and getting Shamar James. I think if you look at that on the surface, which Florida fans are going to look at it and celebrate, do that. It's a lot of fun, and you got two really good players. Georgia fans are going to look at it. Some of them still want to laugh at Florida's class and the overall look of it, and I get that. It's rivalry. It's college football. It's what we do. But you also got some other Georgia fans that kind of want to jab at the Georgia staff for losing to a brand new staff like that on a couple of players. Well, keep in mind that look at Georgia's inside linebacker class, and think that's not exactly a selling point for yourself. That's something that can be used against you. Look at Georgia's DB class, and I know Kamari Wilson's a safety, but Georgia signed two safeties, two really good safeties, three really good cornerbacks. All of those guys were signed and in the fold before Kamari Wilson ever made a decision, and that probably didn't help them a lot either. It doesn't mean that you can't go out and get them. It doesn't mean that that's the reason you didn't get them, but there's a lot of different things that play there, and Georgia would have loved to have had Wilson. They would have loved to have had Shamar James. They didn't get either one of them, but they still ended up with incredible hauls, I feel like, at both of those positions. And I got a feeling some of those names are going to pop up here in just a little bit when we do our superlatives. Kip, probably maybe a little bit of a different point of view for you this year. I know a lot of years and on National Signing Day, you're out roaming around, covering announcements, doing different things, but you were kind of hunkered down in the fort, same fort that I was, just a different location. Where did it rank for you, or where did it compare for you just in terms of what the heck's going on?
Well, I mean, like you guys said, every signing day is unique. This can be number 16 for me, and I still, not be prepared for what's going to happen. I think the same will be said next year. We'll have new wrinkles. Who knows how it's going to look next year, but it was interesting just because by 10 a.m., 18 signees were in by 10 a.m. And like you guys said, I mean, I was setting up the signing day schedule, putting that article on the site, and saw every single guy Georgia was fighting to add to the class. It was 4 o'clock, 4:40, 5:30, 6 p.m. So for Georgia fans that like to celebrate on signing day and, maybe you have an adult beverage or two, it was probably a pretty long day by the time that these actual announcements were coming down. And it does create a unique experience because, for Rusty, he's having to have a whole day of tracking where things are. I mean, where things are at 10 may be differently at noon.
Absolutely.
And 1 p.m. These coaches are on the phones or trying to get Zoom, trying to get a hold of these guys, say, hey, where are we? Where are we? How's it looking? How's it looking? And if you're doing that for over 8 hours, I mean, that is a challenge on our end. And it, like you said, if there's a guy announcing, in Kennesaw or, even Columbus, one of us will be there. But I mean, Georgia's recruiting guys that are kind of in South Florida. You make that drive down there for an announcement, and then you're making the long drive back if it doesn't go your way. But there's no real way to get down there and get a good feel for what's going on because it's all happening on the phone with coaching staffs. So it is a challenge for us as we're trying to tell the Junkyard, hey, this is where things are at 1, this is where things are at 2. But I mean, I think what you can't really you don't want to miss the fact that Georgia had a big recruiting victory a day early. I mean, Dalen Everett jumping on board, and he was planning on having a 10 a.m. announcement on signing day, but Tuesday rolls around, he's just like, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So a lot of this discussion about Georgia having five stars, they added one on Tuesday, and then they added another on Wednesday at the biggest position of need we thought in the class at edge. I mean, on the show when we had the last pause, I said Marvin Jones Jr. might be the most important recruit left on the board for Georgia based on what they need, and they got him. And and so there's some things, if you kind of peel back and look at it, like you guys said, the ones they lost did happen to be at positions that they had other guys in the class. When you look at Shamar James, they have a couple of very talented top 100 linebackers on board. And then when you look in the secondary, I think it's pretty clear that no one's complaining about the job that Coach Adai did in his first full year on Georgia's coaching staff. Maybe the most talented secondary class Georgia's ever reeled in. And, No, who knows? I mean, with Kamari Wilson, seeing the guys that Georgia had on board, that may have been something that helped Florida in the end when they're trying to recruit guys and pitch them on playing time. I think Georgia's DB class, would have been special with him, but it's special without him. So overall, if you're looking on what happened just on signing day, you could see Georgia miss out on some guys that were announcing. But if you look at the class, outside of receiver, I think they've really hit on everything, and they still have a chance to add a couple guys at the All-American Bowl as well, just to kind of add to what is already, I mean, at worst, maybe Georgia's second best class ever.
Yeah, for sure. And let's go ahead and get to this one real quick, and we'll do superlatives on the second half. Hell of a class. I think we would all agree with that. An incredible class. And Kirby Smart and his staff continue to show their commitment to recruiting. But the receiver group, I think we would all agree that was the group that Georgia missed on some guys that it would have liked to have gotten. I'm concerned about it for Georgia. I still think it has a chance to work out for them because, I think Chandler Smith, that speed, that raw speed. And I tell you what, you look at his film and, sometimes you see a guy and he's listed at 6'1", 180, and you see him on film and you're like, ooh, he's a rail. He's small. Chandler Smith looks big. Like, he's a big looking dude on film, and he moves really well. You got a lot of upside. You got a lot of potential there. You got Denylon Morissette, who is a really good football player. I don't know that he's got that one elite skill. I mean, he's not super big. He's not super fast. He's a guy that kind of gives off that Riley Ridley type of vibe as far as a player. And if Georgia gets that out of him, that'll be great, because Riley Ridley was a very productive player at Georgia. Cole Spear, I feel like, has a pretty good bit of upside, good size, good speed, but on paper, it doesn't stack up to the elite wide receiver classes in the country. And, Rusty, just wanted to give you a chance to, how worried are you about that wide receiver class? And what do you think the future holds there for Georgia as far as those three guys that signed yesterday?
Concerned. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Concerned. But, I really dug into the wide receiver offers today. And if you look at things, Denylon Morissette was a major target for Georgia from the start. He was an in-state kid. They lost Kojo Antwi at Lambert High School right there in Gwinnett County. They lost him to Ohio State. That was a big in-state battle. Other than that, Georgia had to go out and try to win big out-of-state battles.
Way out-of-state battles, too. I'm not talking about, like, next door type deals.
Luther Burden in Missouri. You look at Andre Green in Virginia. You look at Evan Stewart in Texas. So Georgia went after the high-level 4- and 5-star kids. They had them all on campus at one time. They were really, really close to getting Luther Burden. So there's a couple of things there I think that worked against Georgia, the depth and the state. I think the sleeper prospect, maybe Tennessee guy, Caleb Webb, kid out of McEachern, had a really, really good year. Verified times, kind of a late bloomer. We'll see how that goes down the line. I think Cole Spears, a person that Georgia identified, worked him out. I think is a really good signature for Georgia. But overall, when you start talking about those elite kids, they weren't in the state of Georgia, so they had to go out and get those guys. And Jordan popped in here when I started talking about Tennessee. You see how
I was worried we weren't live there for a minute, brother.
You see how quick he jumped there, and I said Tennessee, man. He hit the
first thing I looked at. I tried to see if that thing was live up there in the top left. I was like, no, we're 14 minutes in, Jordan. We can't start over.
Hit the live button on that Tennessee deal. Jordan, I'll give you some credit. I think Tennessee did a good job with Caleb Webb out of McEachern. But there were some things working against Georgia, and then at the end of the day, nobody cares. Nobody gives you points for second place. It's what you signed. So, yeah, they got to get some guys. I think they'll get a guy in port. I don't think it's panic time, though. Adonai Mitchell, however how you pronounce his name, I don't want to butcher it. Really good young player.
You already did.
Brad McCollum, Brock Bauer.
You don't want to.
Those guys, they got some young players that can play, and you put some guys in the mix. Oh, you're going to get Arian Smith back. So, yes, it is concerning that you're missing on some of these bigger battles. I think there's a few things that worked against Georgia as far as in-state, but I don't think it's quite panic time in the wide receiver room, but you want to add more depth. You want to add more quality depth.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And, it's that, it's speed now. It really is. It's so much speed and so much suddenness, and you kind of see it with the way Alabama's recruiting receivers. But I will say this, and I had somebody kind of point this out to me yesterday, like, oh, well, Georgia's going to have to go to the portal again for receiver. You know where Alabama's number one wide receiver came from this year?
Mm-hmm.
The transfer portal. So it's not the end of the world. It's not a bad thing. You just got
game changing.
Yeah, go get you a guy, supplement. It's going to be the case every year. You're gonna if you every team needs an immediate impact player every year at least one position. Georgia's going to need one probably at safety, probably one at edge, and then one. I don't know that it's necessarily as big of a need as edge and safety, but they would love to have one at receiver too. So it's not a scarlet letter if you have to go to the portal to get a really good player. Kip, you got a different take on the wide receiver class, or is it doom and gloom like me and Rusty?
Well, first off, you guys are mentioning, Alabama's number one receiver. I have to point out that their number two guy, just adding on to that, was a guy that was outside the top 250 at his position coming into Alabama. He wasn't one of those 5-star guys. It's part of the special classes that we've talked about in the past. He was a number 40 receiver coming out of high school. And his verified 40 time coming out was a 4.64. So he wasn't a guy that was known as a burner coming out of high school, at least as far as the known testing times, or one of the elite guys in the country. So, you can get guys into your program, and then down the road, they turn out to be really outstanding players. So when you're looking at Georgia's group, they got numbers, and I think you're mentioning speed. I think Chandler Smith, all the comments aside about whether or not, he can stay healthy on the field, he's a lottery ticket. And when you get Arian Smith on the field, your offense is different. And so that it really is what it's about. You bring a guy like that in, and you hope that what happened in high school, he's moved on from that. You get him in your strength program, and you hope that, you can have a guy like that get on the field and help you. But just him and Denali Morissette, and again, the other guys, Cole Spear as well. Those are guys that aren't in the top 250 are in the top 250 as far as Chandler Smith and Morissette, and guys that can end up outplaying their ranking down the road. But the guys that Georgia missed on, I think Rusty hit on it. It's tough to know who the real decision maker is whenever it's a guy out of state. If it's a guy that's at North Cobb or at Grayson High School, I think Georgia's coaching staff is going to have a pretty good idea of who is helping lead this young man in his decision, who that key person is in his recruitment. It just gets a little bit more difficult when you're having to go to Missouri, to Virginia, to Texas. And I think that is where location really matters when it comes down to decision time. And I think it's just kind of where it hurt Georgia. Can they do better recruiting at the wide receiver position? Yes. Can they also find a guy in the portal to supplement this class and, next year have an opportunity to put a better product on the field in the passing attack, have your guys stay healthy out there and recruit at an elite level at the wide receiver position? I think it's very possible. And I think it's just something to work on moving forward. But, I like the group. I think there's a lot of talent in this group. And I think Cole Spear is a guy that, watching him and all the plays he made for Calhoun, I think he's a guy that comes in there and, pretty much puts himself in the competition for snaps immediately. He's going to come in with that kind of attitude. Just like a guy like Glad McConkey did this season. Once you're in that room, in that position group, he just has that mentality that he's going to earn playing time and make plays. So I really like what he brings to the table, and that's exactly what you want out of your wide receiver.
All right, guys, superlatives on the other side of this break, but let's take it real quick. All right, guys, I got a handful of superlatives that I want us to kind of blow through here real quick, and I really would love to get to all of them. So let's just jump right into them. And Rusty, you brought up a good one before the show. It's probably the one that everybody likes to hear the most. Give me the guy in this class that has signed already, because there's 3 that haven't, and then you've got Christian Miller and Ernest Green who have signed, and I'll announce later. Georgia's in it for both of those guys, and a very big time factor for both of those guys. So when you look at the 23 that Georgia signed yesterday, who gets drafted the highest?
Well, I'll give you my 1A and I'll give you 1B for a reason. I'm going to give you 1A because it's a premium position, and I'll go Michael Williams. And I'll go Michael because he's a pass rusher. And it's always quarterback. Can you rush the quarterback? Can you protect the quarterback? And are you a quarterback? That's the guys that are drafted first. In 2020, I said Jalen Carter would be the first guy signed out of that class, and I stand by that because the defensive lineman that can rush the passer, create havoc, etc. I'll go 1B because anybody that's ever followed me knows I don't like to compare. I don't want to put that comparison on it because it's such a standard. But I think Jalen Walker's a guy. I think he is an absolute. This kid's got superstar written all over him because of a couple of things. He's a college coach's son. His dad's a Division I college football coach. He understands the game. He understands the dedication. He is so polished as a young man. Just absorbed. You can just talk to him and understand this kid has really, really got it, and he's a very smart. But I'm telling you this is an athletic freak on the football field. This guy can play on the edge. This guy can play inside backer. I don't want to say this is Roquan Smith, but this guy has potential to be a Roquan Smith because he's taller and longer than like a Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean's that's going to be a high-level draft pick, but when you start separating some guys, Jalen Walker's taller and a little bit longer than Nakobe Dean. So I go 1A, and I hate to steal 2, but I'll go 1A with Michael because he's a pass rusher, and I've seen him enough. And I think his best playing days are ahead of him, but I think Jalen Walker's a guy that Georgia fans are going to love.
Yeah, I'm going to have Jalen Walker a little later on. My pick's Marvin Jones Jr. I love the fact I'm so excited because I was a huge fan of his dad. I remember his dad playing linebacker, such a really, really good football player. I think coming from that kind of pedigree with those types of measurables, incredible twitch for a 6'5" dude. I mean, so quick and an incredible motor. He's like, to me, he's almost like Brenton Cox frame, Azeez Ojulari skill set. And you just kind of marry those together, and we'll see how hard he works and how much it pans out for him, how healthy he can stay. But I think he's going to be the highest drafted guy from this group of signees from yesterday. Kip, who you got?
Man, I was going to say Jalen Walker, but you know what? I'm going to go with Malachi Starks just because this guy. I mean, we got you can list him as an athlete, but this guy's going to come in and push for playing time from day one at safety, and he's going to have film, multiple years of film. I think just because. One, his talent level, and 2, Georgia needs help at that position. You've seen the guys, they've had really some depth issues at the position this year. And I think he's a guy that can come in there and help them immediately. And I mean, we shouldn't be calling any of these guys 3-and-out guys, but I just think that Malachi Starks is the type of guy who comes in, maybe not start, but he's in that rotation from day one. And maybe he does start a couple games for Georgia next year. They might need him to, but he does everything, for Jefferson. He's an outstanding athlete. He's got verified track speed as well. I mean, being a 10.55 guy at his size, the long jump, there's not anything that Malachi doesn't excel at right now, on and off the field. I just think that he was that guy early on in this class. You got him, okay, we can work with this. And then looking at the secondary class, you just can't overlook what he brings to the table. I mean, having watched a lot of outstanding athletes over the years, I mean, we should never do the player comparisons, but as far as what he does in the field, I mean, it's very Eric Berry-like. Just everything that he does, the burst, the way he attacks the football, the way that he can help on both sides of the ball. He just has that high ceiling twitch about him. He's just really, really fluid athlete. And I think that's exactly what Georgia needs in the safety position. I think he's going to be a guy in 3 years we're talking about as one of the better DBs to suit up for Georgia. And they've had some really good ones over the years.
Jordan over here in the chat saying, "Is this a Tennessee podcast?" Because you mentioned Eric Berry, so Jordan's trolling us over here.
One of the best ever play there
on our own show. Yeah, Eric Berry's a stud. All right, highest floor of any player in this class. This is where I'm going with Jalen Walker because, I mean, barring injury, the kid's going to be a productive player at Georgia. He's going to start 20 plus games. He's going to be a major factor in 25, 30 plus games and do some big things at Georgia barring injury. So I've got Jalen Walker as my highest floor guy. Rusty, who's your highest floor guy?
Got Branson Robinson because he'll get a ton of touches.
Yeah.
Big guy like that. They're going to run the ball. I don't care who's the quarterback. Georgia's still going to be Georgia at times. And this is a guy that can impact the game and more importantly, can impact the red zone because he's a powerful back that can run through tackles, move the chains. And you got to have 5 tough yards. You want to start with somebody like Branson Robinson.
All right, Kip, highest floor.
I like it. CJ Washington for me, a guy you don't have to worry about. He's just going to go out there and get it done. I think, you look at Georgia's inside linebackers. He's got that explosiveness. He's got the versatility of having played offense as well. So that, again, he can play off-ball linebacker for you. He's got length, and he's going to be able to add more mass. I think he just comes in there and gives you a guy that can play all 3 downs, attacks the football well. And I think that he's got some upside as well, but I just think he's a football player. And I think just he checks off all the boxes. I don't think the developmental curve is going to be very difficult for him. I think he comes in and gets in that 2 deep. And as long as he stays healthy, it's highly productive for Georgia over the next 3-4 years.
Probably going to have some doubling up here, but Rusty, who's your highest upside, highest ceiling?
Ja'Cory Thomas. I think it's the kid that people, know a little bit about, but I haven't seen Ja'Cory Thomas. I've seen him on tape, but everybody I talked to in that Buttsmeer building, when he worked out this summer, they were just blown away with him. They offered immediately, got him up campus back again next week. I think Ja'Cory Thomas is a guy that Georgia fans probably not paying enough attention to right now. You need some safety help. You need a guy that can play.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
No.
You froze there for a minute on us.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah,
Ja'Cory Thomas. Ja'Cory Thomas was my guy if that went.
Kip, who you got? Highest ceiling.
You know what, man? I thought about this for a while. I really like Jacob Hood just because you got a guy with that kind of size. I mean, you can't teach that type of thing. I think that he's a guy that, looking at the competition, there's going to be, a learning curve for him, but he can bend for a guy that's pushing 6'8". I think once he gets in that strength and conditioning program, he's going to continue to trend upward. I think he's already lost some weight. I think he was, 380 maybe a year ago, already in the 340s now. I think if he continues along this path of that with that arm length that he has and his leverage and pad level, I think he can really be a huge help in the run game. And I mean, the future's bright as a pass protector too. So inside, outside versatility. There's a lot of things to work with there with Jacob Hood.
Yeah, I had a guy that I know really well and talk O-line with. A high school coach told me that he's a big Georgia fan. He said that he would like Ba and Hood's upside over even a guy like Warren McClendon, who has played an incredible right tackle for Georgia the past couple of years. And still that depends on staying healthy and getting better. That's what all that comes down to. And that's up to those guys in a lot of ways. My highest ceiling guy, obviously I love Marvin Jones Jr.'s ceiling. I can't believe Georgia's got a 6'1" 5-star corner and a 6'2" 5-star corner, and we're going to get through 3 rounds of this without bringing either one of them up. But I'm going Julian Humphrey because, the kid can fly. He can absolutely go. I think he's a little crazy on the football field in a good way. I think he's got a little bit of just some hyper competitiveness to him. I still think he's a little bit raw. But in some ways, I don't know his personality inside and out. I haven't got a chance to know him like I knew Eric Stokes, but in some ways he kind of reminds me of Eric Stokes just a little bit in terms of length and frame and speed and competitiveness. I like Julian Humphrey a lot. I think he's going to be a really good player, super high ceiling. Has a chance to be about as good as he wants to be. Rusty, give me a freak show. Who's the biggest freak show guy in this class for you? Biggest, holy crap, man. Who is that?
I mean, Kip talked about it, Malachi Starks. I mean, this is a kid that runs a 10-500 with a 24-9 long jump. I don't think people understand what a 24-9 long jump is. The only person I've ever heard to put on a Georgia Bulldog uniform that was a 24-plus long jumper was Reggie Brown. He was state champion. Malachi Starks, to be able to do what he could do, triple jump, high jump, everything. I mean, this kid is absolutely it's NFL stuff. I mean, when you look at his numbers and data that supports it, but you talking about explosion, through your core, to be able to 24-9 long jump in a 6'1", 205-pound frame is unheard of. And I know, by the way, he backed it up with a 10-500 in the semifinals, came back, I think he ran like 10-8 in the finals because just wasn't his day that day. But I don't know that there's anybody in the country that can show the track measurables along with the size of Malachi Starks. He is as freaky as it gets with verified data.
I'm going to go Branson Robinson. There's a lot of things I won't forget about working in this business, but Branson Robinson on his visit, noticeable, very noticeable, walking out of that tunnel on the sideline from the press box. I looked down there and I was like,
he's got some curls, hasn't he?
I looked down there and I saw a guy and I was like, man, is that somebody's dad? Is that, DeAndre Swift's dad back? I mean, is that Kendall Milton's dad down there on the sideline? Like, this man's put together like a dude that's been lifting weights for 30 years. I mean, he's carved out of a mountain, man. I mean, he just is. He's something else. And you flip on that film and he's fast. He's got burst. He's got balance. He's got toughness. He's got contact balance. Tell you what, man, there's some guys, they're going to have some rough memories, I feel like, of trying to tackle Branson Robinson one-on-one downhill. Maybe some ringing in the ears type deal going on there, because he's going to be a load, and he's got the speed and the quickness and all that stuff to match. Kip, who you got?
Well, if I'm going on a different path than either of you guys go, I'll go with the guy left, and that's Chandler Smith, a guy that, again, looks bigger than his listed size. But if you're gonna talk about freak athletes, a guy that runs a 10.28 100 and a 26.2 200, I mean, those are elite times. And when we talk about Arian Smith and the speed he brings to the table, this is a guy that's right there with him coming out of high school. So to have a guy like that, to potentially have two guys that could really take the top off of defense out there in your wide receiver group, that's not something that a lot of schools can say they have. I mean, there aren't a lot of sub 10-3 guys out there, just guys that are already that good at their craft. And so for him to be a state champion and in both those events and to look to have some length to him too. That's the thing. His measurements are estimated. There are not verified measurements on his profile. And as you guys said, I think he's a little bit bigger than that. So usually you see these guys that have that kind of speed. I mean, like we remember Miko Harbin, he was barely hitting 5'10" if he had the right shoes on that day. So I just think for a guy to be, over 6 foot and maybe over 6'1", and to be able to put that kind of athleticism out there, I think that's really elite. And that's the two freak show type stuff. So it's just all about him putting it all together and making sure that you got a football player as well.
All right, guys, last one, Impact Award, career impact superlative. 3 to 5 years from now, when all of this class has moved on one way or the other, who do you look back, Rusty, and say, this guy had the biggest impact at the University of Georgia? Maybe he's not going to be the highest draft pick, not the big. I mean, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but he had the biggest impact, the best career at Georgia.
I think this is real easy. If he wins the job, it's Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah.
He's the most pivotal part of
I think we can all nod our heads yes, because that's exactly what
I was wanting to answer that one first. I was like, come on, Jake, pick me.
I can cut us down, all of us, because if Gunnar Stockton wins the job, probably going to win it as a freshman or a red shirt at some points. That means he's going to play a lot of games. So obviously nobody impacts a football game more than a quarterback because they touch the ball every single play offensively. So I think we could all feel safe going with Gunnar Stockton.
And for me, it dips even further than just the position he plays. I think he's got the it factor. You hear Kirby talk about him yesterday. It's not because Kirby said this, but I just think this guy has a laser-like focus to play the quarterback position and to be great at it. I think there's some cockiness there that you want. There's some athleticism there. There's a sturdy body at 6 foot, 6'1", 210, 215, 20 pounds. There's a lot of intangibles there that I really like. And, I think this is a guy that's going to be a multi-year starter in Athens. And I think Georgia's got to get to that point again where they've got a high upside guy playing quarterback and doing it for multiple years.
Yeah.
That's got to happen. You're muted. You unmuted and then muted again.
I'll say this because it'd be a lot easier to say this here than to write it in the behind the scenes. I've said it on a couple interviews, may have said it here, but a good friend of mine, longtime Calhoun High School offense coordinator Mike Davis, took the job 21 years at Calhoun. He took the job at Raven this year to coach Gunnar Stockton. They came and hired him, wanted to put his offense around Gunnar, and had a record-breaking year basically. But what wasn't mentioned, and I didn't know this either until a couple weeks ago, Gunnar was hurt throughout the year, and he played through injury. And they had 2 games in the middle of the year where they didn't need him. And they weren't going to play him much at all. Well, Gunnar wasn't having that. So they got to a point where they took his helmet one day and said, "You're not practicing." And he went off. I mean, he went off. He went and got his helmet. They turned around. He was practicing. And at that point, the coaches said, "You know what? You can't – this dude's different." Okay. So when you have little things like that, those little – you can play through toughness. You can play through some being banged up. And your other teammates see that you're not going to sit on the side and have that green jersey on, unless medically you have to. But little things like that tell you that Gunnar Stockton's different.
Kid, what is it about you? You shook your head just like the rest of us. Give us your Gunnar Stockton take why he would be your pick here.
I mean, whenever we knew he wasn't doing Elite 11, he's just focused on his team, and that's how he's going to be at Georgia. I mean, that's what – I mean – you love to hear about that from any guy, but especially your quarterback. I mean, that's your leader. That's the guy that has to have control of the locker room. And I think it's pretty clear from, that his teammates feel that way about him. And he's probably going to win the locker room very early at Georgia, just with his mentality. And you get that kind of tunnel vision where, it's just, that's the only thing you're really thinking about. And as a head football coach, I mean, who wouldn't want that from any of their players, and who wouldn't love to have that from their quarterback? I mean, there are enough distractions out there today. Gosh knows that the 3 of us, I mean, just during the day, just trying to stay focused and doing our job. There's everything out there to kind of peel you away from that. But I think it's pretty clear from, a guy like Gunnar that nothing's really going to do that with him. He's going to get in there and compete and try to help out his football team. And I think that his talent, I mean, the fact that you combine that with the fact that he's basically the most productive quarterback in Georgia high school history and one of the most productive, in high school ever. I think everything, all the boxes are checked there for him to go up there and push for that job, even though it's tough to do that as a freshman. He's going to make that room. They're going to have to, I mean, if you're in that quarterback room in the spring, you're going to have to work your butt off, because that Gunnar's, he's not just coming for the job. I mean, he's just trying to be the best quarterback he can be. And he's probably going to impress the coaching staff with how he goes out there on a day-to-day basis. And they know that maybe there might be some learning pains early on with him, but he's going to make Georgia a better football team, on a weekly basis, just in how he prepares and how he practices. And we know from Kirby Smart that he loves that sort of thing.
Nope.
So he's brought in a quarterback that has the mentality he loves and has the physical traits that we haven't discussed In fact, he's accurate with the football. He makes plays with his legs, and we know that's something that they value there as well. So I just think he got everything you look for in a quarterback and a guy that could probably help Georgia win a lot of football games over the next couple of years.
Don't forget that Brock Vandagriff chose to play 7 games with a torn PCL his senior year. I mean, he had the opportunity to tap out and not play at Prince, and he had a torn PCL, and he finished with a brace on, and he played 7 games to win the state championship. So they got 2 young men with a lot of toughness that's going to battle for this job at some point.
And a lot of raw ability, a lot of raw tools that you want to play the quarterback position. 2 really good athletes, strong arm kids, and they're going to battle it out. And but before that gets here, Georgia's got a playoff game against Michigan and win that one, and they got a chance to win it all. And maybe one of those guys gets a chance to play and defend a national championship team. And we'll get into all of that in the coming weeks. But for this episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast, wrapping up the early signing period, I'm Jake Rowe with Dogs 24/7. He's Rusty Manson, Kip Adams. They are from the same place. Y'all take it easy.